was born 6 weeks before the World War II started. So for me, growing up in a war was normal. This was just what happened every day. And in the first year of the war, my father was called up. He went and joined the Royal Marines. And he was paid very little. So my mother then joined the Women's Royal Air Force. And I was sent down to a little village in the south of England called Stubbington. It's near Portsmouth, to live with my grandfather, my grandmother, and my aunt. And it was normal to have dogfights in the sky, where you would watch the Messerschmitts and the Spitfires chasing each other and making a lot of noise. And I'm told, though I don't remember this, that when one of ours got it, everybody would groan. And then one of theirs got it, everybody would cheer. That's how it was. And the first incident that really affected me was shortly after my first birthday, when my Uncle Jack, who was a squadron leader in the Royal Air Force, disappeared over the North Sea on a reconnaissance flight. There was no trace of him left. Nobody found any wreckage or anything. So what happened was my grandparents, my mother, waited until the end of the war, and even past that, because he might have been picked up by a fishing boat from Iceland or Denmark or Norway or even a German boat and taken as a prisoner of war. The other thing was normal, was having a blimp moored near our house. Do you know what a blimp is? Right, one of those grey things that hang in the sky. And I was told it was there to stop planes flying over the land. They didn't have radar in those days. It was also normal to have the bombers going overhead. Since I was near Portsmouth, and on the other side of the channel was, places in France where they had airports where the bombers, the German bombers, would come over. And it was also normal to have our bombers going over. I don't think they made a different sound. They were both these big propeller-driven planes. And the sirens would go off when their planes came over, and the searchlights would go on, and there would be a lot of racket, a lot of noise. Hey, it was normal. No, it's just how it was. I don't remember D-Day. However, I do remember the invasion of France in 1944. I do remember what happened in my little lane. It was one of the routes down to Portsmouth where the craft were amassing themselves, gathering. And for days, the tanks and the trucks, up come the tears, and the jeeps went by. And I remember distinctly standing up against the wall of my grandfather's house and looking down the driveway. And there were trees like this, arching over at the end of the driveway, and a tank sat there. Tanks made an odd sound. They clank and they rumble. It's a very distinct sound. On June 26th, I reckon I was getting ready for my 4th birthday, which is July 14th. Now the previous summer, my father had given me a swing. He had it made at the Royal Marines shop, and it was the best present ever. I spent hours on that swing. It was out in the middle of a field, and there was a path that you could see that I'd made going through the grass. And the evening of the 24th must have been one of those wonderful English evenings when the light takes a long time to go down in the sky. And of course I was asleep, but I knew that the light would disappear about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And then what happened? On the night, early morning of June the 25th, was a buzz bomb, a doodlebug, hit my village. Do you know what a doodlebug is? A buzz bomb? We now call them drones. It dropped 2,000 pounds of explosive on my village, taking out the haberdashers, the greengrocers, the general store, and the post office. It flattened it. It took out the heart from my village. It also damaged the house that I was in, so that I couldn't live there anymore. My bed was covered in plaster and glass. But, everything was actually fine, because my grandfather and grandmother and my aunt came into my room. They were okay. I didn't think, it was just another thing that happened. It was fine. I grew up a strange child. I would have these inexplicable, raging temper tantrums where I'd get violent and attack people. I would see faces in the clouds and get really scared. And even now today, when I'm stressed, one of my measures is that faces start to come out of the wall at me. See faces in wallpaper. It's amazing what you can make faces come out of. I also startle easily. I still do. And I've trained my kids not to startle me, not to surprise me, because they can be doing something wonderful, but my body takes over and does something totally different, and I cannot stop it. My mind can go, why are you doing this? And my body is just like doing something which I don't like. Like I get really sarcastic, I get really bitter, I get really cynical, and it can't stop it. Okay, so now I'm going to fast forward to the summer of 1975. By now I've moved to Los Angeles, been there for 3 years, and I'm sitting in my living room with a group of women. And 2 of the women start talking about what it was like to be a nurse in Vietnam. They were in MASH units, right at the front line. And I knew exactly what they were talking about. Exactly. Now, think about it. Here I am, about 35. I never had any clue the war had anything to do with me. At all. It never came up in conversation. Nobody in England talked about it. And this was the first inkling I had that events of World War II had anything to do with me. Anything. They were talking about being bombed. I knew what that was like. They talked about the continual stress of being, like having planes go overhead, never knowing what was going to happen next, except it was going to be awful. And I knew what they were talking about. That's when I found out I had flashbacks. I didn't know that when I closed my eyes and saw searchlights moving around, that was a result of a war. I didn't know if that was a flashback. I didn't know that when I had these inexplicable, maniacal rages that I'd been learning to control, but it was still dicey, were the result of wartime experiences. I didn't know that when I would suddenly, for no reason, would suddenly inexplicably start to cry and shake, and because I saw something on a movie, that was also due to my experiences in World War II. So I began to think, I'm one person. I had one bomb. It still affects me. So what are we doing to the children of Aleppo? To the children, what has been done to the children in Gaza? What are we doing to the children in Libya and Somalia and the other places that we're dropping bombs on? When the bomb dropped on my village on Stubbington, it took the heart out of the village. It killed the postmistress. She had a canary. I loved that canary. When a bomb drops, it not only kills the person, but what they call collateral damage is that it affects everybody around it. It not only affects the family of the person being killed, it destroys continuity. It destroys communities. It destroys history. So where I got to in the whole journey of giving this talk, which has taken about 40 years, by the way, is that I want us to be able to talk about war in the same way that we talk about domestic abuse. We talk about sexual abuse. Because one of the things that's come up in talking with people about my experiences, especially when I talk to service people, is that they don't want to talk about it. And this isn't just America. This is in Europe as well. So I'm just wondering, is there a cultural block on looking at what war does that we cannot live with? So my current thought is, how about we have war being an okay subject to talk about? You know, for those of you who served, it was okay to serve. It was okay to be in a war. It was okay to do your job. What is it that stops people talking about war? I don't know, but I definitely think that we have to have it be okay that people talk about war, and that it be something that is a subject that we can relish talking about.